News is breaking across the love and hip-hop universe. And if what's being said is even halfway true, then things behind the scenes have officially spiraled out of control. Whispers are flying in from people close to production, claiming that a shocking moment between Sierra Gates and Mendeecees. Harris turned so volatile, producers had no choice but to shut the entire set down. And now, fans are divided, confused, and absolutely stunned. According to sources, the whole thing started when Sierra allegedly accused Mendeecees of crossing a serious line, something he instantly denied. But what happened next is what nobody saw coming. Insiders say Mendeecees, usually calm and controlled, completely lost it. Furniture was thrown, crew members ran to separate cast members, cameras were cut mid-scene, and security had to physically escort him off set. Was it all just the heat of the moment? Or did Sierra's fake claim push Mendeecees over an edge he'd been standing on for too long? People on social media are saying this might be the beginning of a massive shakeup for the franchise, one that could drag in Yandy, the producers, and even legal teams. We're unpacking everything we've heard because this is not just drama, it's damage. It started slow, like most things do on sets like these. People were laughing, fixing their mics, sipping from red solo cups behind the scenes, not knowing that the calm wouldn't last another 15 minutes. Sierra had shown up later than scheduled. Her glam team had been on edge since morning, whispering about something she was planning to get off her chest. No one paid it much attention at first, until she walked in with that look on her face. Not angry, not loud, just still, too still. Mendeecees was already seated for a casual scene that was supposed to be about upcoming events in Atlanta, something light, the kind of scene producers use to stitch tension between bigger moments. But the second Sierra stepped in and sat across from him, the air shifted. The crew noticed it. Even the sound guy paused, as if his instinct told him this scene wasn't going to go the way it was outlined. They said Sierra didn't waste time. She took off her mic pack briefly, adjusted it herself, and then leaned into the camera. She asked them if they were rolling, and when the cameraman nodded, she turned toward Mendeecees and said it. "You made me uncomfortable last week. And I don't like the way you talk to women." Those weren't light words. They weren't the kind of thing people on these shows just toss out in the middle of a conversation. And Mendeecees, who had already been slouching a bit in his seat, straightened up. He blinked slow, like he wasn't sure he'd heard right. And then he looked over at the producer behind the camera, trying to confirm whether this was a scene or a trap. "What you talking about?" he asked calmly, but his voice had an edge. The kind that lets you know the calm was temporary. Sierra kept her eyes on him. "I'm talking about when you got in my face in the parking lot. The way you leaned in, the way you pointed. You don't talk to me like that." Someone on set gasped quietly, thinking the mics wouldn't catch it. Another cast member, who wasn't even scheduled to be in this scene, peeked around the curtain like they had just heard something they weren't supposed to. Mendeecees leaned forward slowly, trying to keep his expression steady. But you could see the tension building in his jaw. "I never touched you," he said. "Don't play with that." Sierra smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind of smile that said she knew exactly what she was doing. "I never said you did," she replied, sitting back. "But you made me feel like you could." Those words changed the whole vibe. Cameras kept rolling, but the producer had already started texting someone behind the scenes. Maybe legal, maybe the showrunner, maybe someone higher. But the text was sent. People were no longer pretending this was a normal filming day. Mendeecees sat still for a moment, the kind of still that makes people nervous. Then he stood up. Slow, deliberate. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't throwing anything. Not yet. He just stood there and stared at her. "You trying to destroy me?" he asked. Not dramatically, just like someone who had too many knives in his back already. Sierra didn't flinch. "I'm telling my truth." Mendeecees scoffed and looked toward the ceiling, like he was searching for patience that wasn't coming. He started pacing behind the camera crew, not storming, just moving. Too fast for the audio guy to keep tracking him cleanly. He was talking, but most of it was off mic, low, curses under his breath. A makeup artist quietly backed out of the room with her brushes still in her hand. Someone asked if they should cut the scene. A producer said no, keep it going. This might be the moment. Mendeecees came back into frame and said loud enough for everyone to hear. You lying on me on camera? For what? For a moment? For a headline? For what? Sierra crossed her arms. You don't scare me. I'm not trying to scare you, he fired back. I'm trying to understand what you gain by making me look like something I'm not. That's when voices started overlapping. A production assistant tried to say something. Another crew member dropped a mic pack. Someone else was saying, let's cool off for a second. But it was too late. The energy had already changed. Mendeecees slapped his mic off his chest. It cracked against the ground. The boom operator cursed under his breath. Then Mendeecees picked up a nearby folding chair. Not to throw it, but just to move it out of his way. The problem was it scraped loudly across the floor, adding tension that no one needed. Yandy showed up seconds later. She wasn't even scheduled for that location, but someone had clearly called her. Her eyes scanned the room. She knew the look, on his face. She'd seen it before, not the rage but the disappointment. She went straight to him. Just step outside with me, she said softly, reaching for his wrist. But he pulled his arm back, not rough, just fast, and said, I'm not doing this. I'm not gonna let people play with my name like this. Sierra stood up too. If the truth makes you mad, that ain't my fault. That was the last straw. Mendeecees turned toward the crew and shouted, cut the scene, cut the whole thing. I'm not doing this fake reality bulls. Before he could finish, a guard stepped in. The guy had been waiting quietly by the wall for most of the shoot, just in case things got tense. Now he moved in front of Mendeecees calmly but firmly. Just step outside for a second, the guard said. Mendeecees hesitated. His hands were shaking slightly now, not from fear, but from holding too much in. He didn't yell again, didn't curse. He just nodded once and said, y'all gonna regret this. Then he walked out with the guard behind him, Yandy silently following. The room stayed frozen. No one knew whether to keep rolling or start packing up. Sierra looked around, suddenly unsure if she had gone too far or if this was exactly what she planned. She sat back down, took a long breath, and said quietly to herself, I said what I said. But the silence that followed was louder than anything else. Because everyone in that room knew. Something had cracked open that wasn't going to be easy to close. There was something strange about the silence after Mendeecees left the room. It wasn't just awkward. It was weighted. The kind of silence that follows an explosion, when the dust is still in the air, and nobody knows what kind of damage has really been done. Production hadn't officially called cut, but no one was speaking into mics. Crew members were standing around, holding cables in their hands without moving. Cameras were still rolling, but the energy was gone. It felt like everyone was waiting for someone else to say what they were all thinking. Yandy had followed him out the side exit. She didn't say anything at first. Mendeecees was pacing in the lot behind the set trailers, breathing hard, head tilted to the sky like he was trying not to scream. His chest rose and fell with every breath, his hands flexing by his sides like he was gripping something invisible. She stood a few feet away, giving him space, but her eyes never left his face. They gonna use that, he said finally, still not looking at her. They gonna edit that to make me look crazy. Yandy nodded slowly. I know. You think I touched her? His voice cracked just a little, like the weight of even asking the question was too much. No, she answered quickly. Too quickly. Not because she doubted him, but because she knew how bad it looked and how easily the world jumps on a headline. He turned to face her finally. I've been working so hard to stay clean, to move right, for the kids, for us. I stayed away from drama. I didn't even want to come back on this show. You talked me into this. Yandy stepped closer. And you've been good. You've been better than good. But you can't let this break you. She said it. You didn't do it. We know the difference. But he shook his head. It doesn't matter what the truth is anymore. Not when somebody say it on camera. Back inside, Sierra was still mic'd up. The cameras had shifted to a loose setup, capturing reaction shots of crew members, cast, and assistants whispering among themselves. Producers were in the corner, huddled around a laptop and texting furiously. Someone had already clipped a preview. Of the moment, Sierra said, "You made me feel like you could." It was only 10 seconds, but everyone knew it would be passed around by morning. Rashida arrived around then. She wasn't supposed to be on set that day, but one phone call had her pulling up in sweats and sunglasses. No glam, no earrings. She'd gotten the word. And if something was going down with Mendeecees, she wanted to know firsthand. "What the hell happened?" she asked, walking straight into the middle of the room. "I just left Kirk for 1 hour." Sierra didn't flinch. "I told my truth." Rashida gave her a long look, the kind of look that scans your whole face, reading every line, every twitch, every flinch. "Did he touch you?" "I never said that," Sierra replied, tone steady. "But that's what people are going to hear," Rashida snapped. "You know that. Everybody knows that." Sierra shrugged. "That's not my fault. That's how he made me feel." Off to the side, one of the producers finally stepped forward. She was short, sharp, and always had a clipboard in her hand. "Okay, we're gonna pause all shooting for today," she announced. "There's too much energy in the room, and we need to talk to legal. No one's being sent home yet, but we are off schedule until further notice." You could feel the shift instantly. The cast scattered, glam teams started quietly packing up their kits, and the entire atmosphere turned cold. It wasn't chaos, it was withdrawal. Like everyone wanted to get as far away from what just happened as possible. Back outside, Mendeecees had sat down on the step behind the trailer. He was hunched over, elbows on his knees, palms pressed together like he was praying without the words. Yandy crouched beside him. "They gonna let that ride," he muttered. "They gonna air it." "They might not," she said gently. "It's still early. They might pull it. Especially if you talk to them calmly. Tell your side." He looked at her sideways. "You think they care about my side?" That was the problem. He already knew the answer. Meanwhile, the news had already started spreading. Crew members had texted friends had tweeted cryptic messages, and fans were already piecing together clues. A vague Instagram story from one of the hairstylists had already been screen recorded and reposted by 3 fan pages. "Some people don't know how to act when you expose their energy," it read, over a blurry shot of the set. Comments had flooded in immediately. "Who y'all talking about? Is this about Mendeecees? Did someone get kicked off the show? I heard he hit somebody." That last one made Yandy's stomach turn when she saw it. She handed her phone to Mendeecees without saying anything. He read the comment, and then scrolled through the others in silence. "They already believe it," he whispered. "It's out there now." Inside the set trailer, producers were in damage control mode. They had already contacted VH1's legal department. Someone suggested they have Sierra film a follow-up immediately to clarify what she meant. But Sierra refused. "I said what I meant," she told them. "I don't owe anybody an explanation. If it was a man who felt threatened, nobody would be asking for clarity." "But you said he made you feel unsafe," the producer replied. "That can be interpreted in so many ways." "That's not my problem," she said again, unbothered. Someone else chimed in. "But if he walks from the show over this, that's on you." Sierra looked dead in the camera and said, "Then maybe he shouldn't have acted like that." The producer sighed. It was clear Sierra wasn't going to walk anything back, and in a twisted way, that made it more valuable. The network thrived on controversy. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew messy stories drove ratings. And if the situation wasn't legally explosive, then the more chaotic, the better. In another part of the trailer, Kirk was speaking to Rashida privately. He'd just gotten there and had heard the whole version from her lips. "You think Sierra planned this?" he asked. "I think she knew what would happen," Rashida replied. "She wanted the reaction. She just didn't think he'd go that far. He didn't even do nothing from what I heard." "Doesn't matter anymore," she whispered. "People believe what they want." And that was the hard truth. Whether it was real or fake, staged or sincere, the damage was already out, and it wasn't going back in. Out back. Yandy sat down beside Mendeecees quietly. She didn't speak. Neither did he. They just sat there together while the world started tearing apart what really happened. Piece by piece, moment by moment, not even waiting to hear his side. It didn't take long for social media to turn the situation into a wildfire. Within an hour, 3 major gossip blogs had posted about an explosive altercation between Sierra and Mendeecees on the Love and Hip Hop set. None of them had footage. None of them had quotes. But the headlines were loud enough to do the damage. One post read, Sierra exposes Love and Hip Hop castmate for making her feel unsafe. Security called in. Another said, Mendeecees reportedly goes off after co-star's chilling confession. By the time Mendeecees got back to his phone, he had hundreds of DMs, missed calls, and comments tagging him in every direction. People weren't even asking, what happened? They were just picking sides. Yandy had warned him not to go online. She'd begged him to stay off the blogs. But he couldn't help himself. He needed to see the damage, and the damage was already deep. He always gave me aggressive vibes. You can tell by the way he talks to Yandy sometimes. This not surprising at all. If he did it, he need to be off the show for good. He scrolled through the chaos quietly, his thumb slowing as he read one particular comment. It said, funny how they only come for black men when they're finally getting their lives together. He didn't like that narrative either. He didn't want this to become about race or gender or politics. He wanted the truth to matter, but he knew better. Truth didn't trend. Meanwhile, production had gone full lockdown mode. All cameras were paused, all upcoming scenes were on hold. The energy on set had turned into cold calculation. The executive, producers were on a call with the network, trying to figure out whether this scandal was going to help them or hurt them. Some were pushing to lean into it. Others wanted to scrap the footage entirely. Inside a side trailer, one producer met with Sierra again. This time, it was different. Less questions, more strategy. You need to be prepared for backlash, she told Sierra calmly. I said, what? I said. Sierra replied, unmoved. I know, but the way you said it, the way it's already being shared, it's going to look like you accused him of putting hands on you. Sierra raised an eyebrow. I didn't say he did. I said I felt unsafe. That's my experience. The producer paused. Would you be willing to film a confessional explaining your side? Not to walk it back, just to clarify? Sierra smirked. You mean damage control. I mean your truth, before everyone else twists it into something else, she thought. About it for a moment, then finally nodded. Fine, but I'm not apologizing. The crew scrambled to get a camera set up. No glam, no lighting. They just needed her raw and real. When the camera started rolling, Sierra looked straight ahead and spoke slowly. I didn't say Mendeecees hit me. I didn't say he pushed me. I said the way he approached me, leaning in, speaking over me, it triggered something. I felt disrespected. I felt intimidated. And I spoke on it. If that offends people, I'm okay with that. Because I'm not going to be quiet when something doesn't feel right. The producer behind the camera didn't say a word. She just nodded and stopped the recording. On the other side of the lot, Mendeecees was in the middle of a conversation that felt more like a breakdown than a meeting. He was sitting across from one of the senior producers, hands clenched, jaw locked. I can't come back from this if y'all air that, he said. Even if I say my piece, even if Yandy vouches for me. The clip's already out. The narrative's already moving. The producer didn't deny it. We're figuring out what to do. Nah, he cut in. You already figured it out. Y'all gon' use it. You want the drama, you want the numbers. You know how this works, the producer replied. It's a reality show. We show what happens. No, you show what you want to show. And you know it. His voice wasn't loud, but the pain underneath was undeniable. This wasn't about one moment anymore. This was about everything he'd been trying to fix. The image, the reputation, the years spent proving he wasn't the same man from his past. And now, with one on-camera accusation, no matter how vague, all of that was slipping through his fingers. Yandy was standing nearby, talking to legal. She was trying to see if there was any kind of clause that protected them from defamatory. Edits. The legal team was vague, non-committal, hiding behind standard contracts. It was clear they weren't going to stop anything unless it crossed a legal boundary, and vague accusations didn't. By nightfall, the entire cast had heard about the scene. Some were texting Yandy privately, asking if it was true. Others were already crafting their own responses, prepping for confessionals that hadn't even been approved yet. A few of them had already picked sides, and none of them had seen the full footage. At home, Bambi had posted a black screen with a cryptic caption, "Some people will do anything to be seen." Scrappy reposted a meme that said, "Every villain got a victim complex." Fans were running wild with theories. Some were convinced it was all staged. Others were swearing they knew Sierra would be the next breakout villain. A few were calling for the whole show to be canceled. In the middle of all this, Mendeecees and Yandy sat in their living room, surrounded by silence. The kids were at a cousin's house. The lights were low. Yandy was scrolling through Twitter, trying to keep up with what people were saying. Mendeecees wasn't even looking at his phone anymore. "You want to go back and film?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "Not like this. Not with them playing with my name." "Then don't," she said. "Walk away." He looked at her. "And let the lie win?" "No," she whispered. "Let the truth breathe without cameras." But even as she said it, they both knew it wasn't that simple. This wasn't just a personal moment. It was public now. Viral. And no matter how he handled it from here, someone, somewhere was going to twist it into whatever story suited them best. Meanwhile, Sierra was still on set, laughing with her assistant. Her mood hadn't shifted. She was already talking about what she wanted to wear in the next episode. Someone handed her a phone, showing her how her confession clip was already trending. "They eaten it up," she said with a grin. Someone asked her if she was nervous about the backlash. "They'll forget by next week," she replied. "They always do." But deep down, she knew this wasn't like other drama. This had crossed a line she hadn't fully considered. Because even if people moved on, the ones involved wouldn't forget. And the ones who saw what really happened wouldn't either. The following morning felt like a storm had passed, but the sky was still dark. No one from production had sent a schedule. There were no group texts, no call sheets, no transport vans lined up for the next shoot. It was like the entire set had hit pause. Unofficially, Love and Hip Hop was on hold. Not because of logistics, but because no one knew how to proceed after what happened between Sierra and Mendeecees. Mendeecees hadn't slept. He'd spent the night on the couch, flipping between silence and frustration, trying not to wake Yandy, who eventually fell asleep. Beside him, fully clothed, her phone still in her hand. The house was quiet, but his mind wasn't. He couldn't stop replaying the scene. The words Sierra used, the way she looked at him, the way everyone else looked at him after. Like something had shifted, like he'd become dangerous, even when he hadn't done a thing. It was a feeling he'd fought against for years, ever since getting out, trying to be better, trying to show up right. And now, one sentence had dragged him back into a narrative he'd worked so hard to escape. Yandy woke up just after sunrise. She didn't say anything at first, just sat next to him, scrolling through her phone quietly. There were more updates, more blogs. Someone had uploaded a clip that wasn't even supposed to be public. The moment Mendeecees slammed his mic on, the ground. No audio. Just that visual. Paired with a caption that read, "Rage is real." He didn't say a word. He just stood up and walked to the kitchen. Yandy followed. "They're trying to frame it like a pattern," she said quietly. "They're digging up old scenes, old interviews, stuff you said years ago." He shook his head slowly. "It don't matter what I say now, does it? It's already out there." Yandy exhaled. "We still have a say in how this ends." He turned to her. "Or do we?" Back on set, producers were scrambling to recover. VH1's legal team had issued a formal notice. Nothing would be aired until both parties had a chance to respond on camera. But that didn't stop the leaks. Someone had already shared the draft footage with a friend, and it was clear multiple versions of the story were making their way around the industry. Crew members who were silent yesterday were now talking. Extras were telling their own versions. Assistants were spreading partial truths. Inside a production office, two senior producers debated their next move. If we cut it, we lose the ratings spike. If we air it, we risk getting sued. Unless he signs off. He's not gonna sign, then spin it. How? The conversation was cold, calculated. They weren't discussing truth. They were discussing storylines. Meanwhile, Kirk and Rashida were at home talking about what had gone down. Kirk had spoken to Mendeecees late the night before. The conversation had been short, but revealing. "He's hurt," Kirk told her. "This ain't just drama to him, it's bigger." "Because it hits his past," Rashida replied. "And people already decided who he is." "You think he's gonna quit?" "I don't know," she said. "But if he does, they'll say it's guilt. If he stays, they'll say it's spin. He's stuck either way." Yandy was already planning. She wasn't just going to let it happen. She started calling in favors, bloggers, influencers, old producers she trusted, people who could help her get his side of the story out before the network twisted it. She reached out to a podcast host she knew, someone neutral, someone who'd let Mendeecees speak without judgment. When he finally agreed to do it, it wasn't because he wanted to defend himself. It was because he needed to look his kids in the eye and say he didn't stay silent when someone lied on him. The podcast was raw. No edits, no clips, just Mendeecees and a mic. People don't understand what it's like to be accused of something you didn't do on camera, he said. They don't see the damage. They just see the clip, the outrage, the drama. But behind that, there's real people. There's families. There's history. And that accusation, even without proof, it sticks. When the episode aired, fans were divided again. Some called it damage control. Others said he sounded sincere. A few said Sierra was still brave for speaking her truth. But the tone shifted. For the first time since the explosion, people were asking for the full story, not just a headline. Sierra, meanwhile, hadn't posted anything. She was quiet. No stories, no tweets. Just silence. Her team had told her to lay low. She was frustrated, but she listened. What she didn't know was that one of the mic techs had saved a backup recording from earlier in the scene. The raw audio that caught every word, even the ones the main camera didn't. The footage hadn't been shared yet, but it existed. And in that audio, you could hear the exact tone of her accusation. The pause, the smirk, the words. One of the producers had listened to it in full. And suddenly, the story didn't sound so black and white anymore. In a meeting with the network, they debated what to do with the raw audio. We can't air it without legal approval, but it shows intent. Intent's not illegal. And it's not ratings either. But someone was already leaking parts of it anonymously. A short clip of her saying, "You made me feel like you could," followed by laughter in the background, had surfaced. It made things worse for Sierra. Fans began turning on her, calling her manipulative, saying she weaponized fear. Comment sections were flooded again. Only this time the blame was shifting. She played that man on camera. This is why people don't take real victims seriously. She knew what she was doing. Yandy saw it all. She didn't celebrate. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just looked at Mendeecees and said, "This isn't over, but you're not alone." Mendeecees nodded, but he didn't smile because he knew something had changed forever. Even if the truth came out, even if the network apologized, even if fans saw the real footage, the scar was already there. The doubt, the headline, the silence that followed when he walked off that set. And some things don't go back to how they were. By the end of the week, the producers announced that filming would resume under careful supervision. Security would be increased. Scenes would be reviewed more closely. And both Sierra and Mendeecees would be invited to have private sit-down confessionals to close the situation. Whether either of them agreed was still uncertain, but the damage had already been done. Not just to reputations, but to trust, to truth, to the idea that reality TV could still be real at all. If you've been watching Love and Hip Hop for years, you already know the drama runs deep. But this hit different. The fallout from Sierra's accusation and Mendeecees' breakdown has left fans completely divided, producers scrambling, and the entire cast walking on eggshells. We don't know yet whether Mendeecees will return to filming, whether Sierra will double down, or whether VH1 will try to bury the footage before things spiral even further. But one thing is clear. Something broke that day. And it wasn't just a mic. This situation has raised serious questions about what's real and what's manufactured in reality television. How far is too far when it comes to a storyline? Can a single moment erase years of growth, or will the truth eventually come out? And even more importantly, can Mendeecees recover from this, or has his public image already taken an unrecoverable hit? We want to hear what you think. Do you believe Sierra crossed the line? Was Mendeecees justified in his reaction? Should the producers have stepped in sooner, or is this just the price of reality fame? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't hold back. And if you're just as locked into this drama as we are, make sure you like this video, subscribe for more exclusive updates, and turn on your notifications so you never miss what's really going down behind the scenes. Because in this world, the cameras might stop rolling, but the story never ends. It never ends.